Hi, I'm William Mills at Finovate Fall in New York, and I'm joined today by Peggy Mangot of PayPal Ventures. How are you doing, Peggy?
I'm great, thank you.
It's great to see you. Well, tell us a little bit about yourself and your role at PayPal Ventures.
Sure. My name is Peggy Mangot. I'm operating partner for PayPal Ventures.
Right.
PayPal Ventures is the venture arm of PayPal. We're investing out of our second fund, a $500 million fund, and we invest in areas that are strategic to PayPal and the ecosystem, which includes consumer fintech, commerce enablement, and innovation and infrastructure.
Right.
And when you think about why a company has an innovation or a venture arm, there's really two sides. One is to invest for return, to be part of these success stories and to support the ecosystem.
Right.
But the second is also being on the front lines, hearing pitches, working with portfolio companies, gives you a lot of strategic insight, strategic learning, market insight that you otherwise, if you're not close to the startup industry, you otherwise might not get. So my role as an operating partner is two-sided. I have a small team, and on the one side, we work with our portfolio companies to help them be successful, whether that's working with PayPal, whether that's selling within the industry, but how can we be helpful to our portfolio companies?
Right.
And the other side is making sure that we're efficiently bringing back learnings to our PayPal leaders. Like, what are we seeing? What trends? Like, what, stitching together, kind of connecting the dots so that they're benefiting kind of from this investment that they've made.
Absolutely, makes a lot of sense. You've just come off the stage off your keynote on what are the key questions to ask when evaluating neobanks. For those folks like myself that couldn't make that session, what were some important points and the key takeaways that you shared in your keynote?
So the first one is surrounding monetization. So if you are evaluating a neobank, whether you're a founder that wants to start one, you want to invest in one, or you're an employee that might work there, the first area that you need to evaluate is monetization. So what is the monetization plan for the neobank? Is it subscription? Is it interchange? Is it an affiliate or a tipping model? So really understanding the monetization model, and as an aside, the rise of subscription in neobanks. We've seen a rise in subscription as the monetization vehicle for neobanks, and
Right.
I don't see that trend. I see that trend continuing. So one of the second questions is surrounding the market. So how big is the total addressable market? Some of these neobanks are really going after a subset of the mass market, a cohort, so to speak. And so you want to understand how big is that market, how many competitors are kind of competing for the same customer,
Right.
What percentage are you going to need to have a successful, profitable platform, right? Is it big enough? And can you, and then, well, that leads into the third one, which is surrounding marketing, right? That's the
Right.
biggest one for neobanks, right? So what is their hypothesis plan, the data showing that how they're going to efficiently acquire at scale,
Right.
Because the market is getting very crowded with traditional banks, mass market neobanks like Chime and Varo, and
Right.
now these emerging vertical neobanks that will also be, competing for mind share and customers.
Absolutely. Well, you're going to be discussing this topic a bit further in the interactive boardroom session coming up. What questions and ideas do you hope that will come out of the boardroom session today?
Well, look, I am coming in with kind of my own areas of conviction, right? And so I think that there is an opportunity for vertical banks to have breakaway success. And what I'm looking for is to be around others to kind of challenge some of my assumptions surrounding can vertical banks be successful? And I'll give you one example.
Sure.
So one example is if you take a typical customer today, they may have relationships with like 6 or 7 financial institutions, and they're fine with it. right? They have Venmo for P2P and crypto. They have Robinhood for equity and snacks. They have a 401k with Schwab. They have, student loan refinancing with SoFi. They maybe have early wage access from Chime. They have an existing bank account with Bank of America. So we see this today, and people are fine with it.
Right.
So I'm thinking one hypothesis I have is if this vertical bank can really capture that community and provide differentiated service and community, then they may be able to add a seventh or an eighth. So that's kind of what I'm looking for, is to be challenged on some of those assumptions.
Wouldn't it be wildly inefficient for someone to have so many different financial relationships?
Well, you would think so, right? So when I was looking at neobanks earlier in my career, the question was, will the neobanks disrupt the large traditional financial institutions?
Right.
And it was, maybe, right? But now what we're seeing is it's a slow burn. Like, they're still keeping some of these accounts, they're just not using them as much because they're using the neobanks, and they're finding the discrete relationships that are working for them. So one for short-term loans, one for their 401k, one for refinancing. They're not looking right now for everything to be all in one place. And maybe that will change. That's also what I'm looking for today. Someone with a strong view to kind of challenge that, over time, consumers are going to want them back all together, or at least a unified view, which maybe they do.
I guess that remains to be seen.
Exactly,
really.
right.
Well, let's talk about consumers. I mean, I was in Boston not too long ago and seeing gigantic advertising for neobank, a particular neobank, you probably know. What's in it for the consumer at the end of the day?
Well, look, the neobanks, and I would say even the neo-brokers, have affected incredible change across the industry. Right, so I'll give you an example. One example is in the neo-broker space, right? So Robinhood, no fees.
Right.
They ended up changing the industry. Everyone slashed their fees, right? About 18 months ago, Robinhood was doing it, Schwab did it, E-Trade. So commission fees went away, and we're seeing that in the neobank space as well, surrounding overdraft fees, right? And the traditional banks have started to cut instances of overdraft fees or do automatic rewinds, and then some are just stopping them altogether. So that's where the consumer benefits. It starts by some of the neobanks having consumer first experiences and practices, and in some cases they're able to move the industry, move the whole industry.
That makes a lot of sense. I know this is a tough question, but in your view, what's the future of finance heading into the next year or so?
So broadly, I think there will be more and more convergence of fintech, finance, and crypto blockchain. There will be use cases. We're starting with investment, like a buy hold, and we're seeing more retail investors saying, okay, I want to try that or have a piece or have some small allocation. We're seeing that increase. But I think over the next 12 to 18 months, there will be a few use cases that will start to emerge, that they will be emerging, but over time they will become more mainstream. And that's the kind of the convergence that I see.
That makes a lot of sense. I'm thinking about the broader Finovate community here. For those folks that are going to be watching this later, maybe in a month, what is one thing you'd like folks to know to come away from what's going on today and what's going to happen in the next 2 years?
I would say from a trend perspective, I find it to be very optimistic. So all of the investment in fintech, the neobanks, the neo-brokers, we're seeing it in the US and global. So a lot of what we've seen in US or other markets, we're starting to see recreated in other markets, right? So I think kind of this globalization of what has worked is exciting. And number one, I think it's very optimistic from a consumer perspective, very optimistic from a small business on what fintech will continue to deliver to make their finances better for themselves, better for their business, and better for their families.
That's awesome. Hey, it's going to be an exciting time.
Yeah.
Well, Peggy, I really appreciate you taking the time to speak with me today. This is William Mills and Peggy Mangot from Finovate Fall here in New York City.
Thank you.